In the quiet, forgotten town of Hollow Creek, there was a legend that had persisted for generations. It was the kind of tale parents told their children to keep them from wandering the streets at night, the kind of story that kept the lights burning long after bedtime. The legend was about a mysterious figure known as the Whispering Man, a shadowy presence who stalked the streets in the dead of night, preying on those who were alone and vulnerable. His arrival was marked by a cold gust of wind and a faint, eerie whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The Whispering Man was more than just a ghost. He was a malevolent entity, and those who heard his whispers were never seen again. Years ago, Hollow Creek was a thriving community, full of life and laughter. But everything changed after a series of strange and unexplained disappearances. The townsfolk believed these events were connected to a reclusive man who lived on the outskirts of town, a man whose name was lost to time but who became known as the Whispering Man. He was a lonely soul, shunned by the townspeople for reasons no one could quite remember. Some said he practiced dark magic. Others believed he was simply cursed. What everyone agreed on was that he began to hear whispers, voices that no one else could hear, voices that drove him to the brink of madness. One cold autumn night, in a fit of rage and despair, the man vanished into the woods, never to be seen again. But the whispers didn't stop. Instead, they grew louder, more insistent, spreading throughout the town like a sickness. It was said that the Whispering Man now wandered the streets of Hollow Creek, seeking revenge on those who had wronged him. He was drawn to those who were alone, especially at night. The legend warned that if you heard a whisper when no one else was around, you must not answer it. If you did, the Whispering Man would find you, and once he did, you would disappear just like those who had wronged him. On one such cold autumn night, a young woman named Emily was walking home after a late shift at the local diner. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind. As she passed the old church, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. The air grew colder, and she could have sworn she heard a faint whisper.
Emily.
She stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around, but the street was deserted, not a soul in sight. The whisper came again, louder this time, more insistent.
Emily.
Fear gripped her, and she began to walk faster, her footsteps echoing in the empty street. The whisper followed her, growing louder with every step, seeming to come from all around her. It was in her ears, in her mind, as if the voice was right beside her.
Emily, don't run.
Panicking, Emily broke into a run, but the whisper only grew more persistent, more sinister. It echoed in her mind, twisting her thoughts, filling her with dread.
Emily, you can't escape.
She sprinted towards her home, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her legs burning with effort. She could see the lights of her house in the distance, a beacon of safety, but the whisper was all around her now, deafening, overwhelming.
Emily, you're mine.
Just as she reached her front door, the whisper stopped. The night was silent once more, but the damage was done. Emily fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking uncontrollably, and finally burst into her house, slamming the door shut behind her. But the silence didn't bring the relief she desperately craved. Instead, it brought a new terror. She knew, deep down, that she had made a terrible mistake by acknowledging the whisper. And then she heard it again, this time right behind her.
Emily.
She spun around, her eyes wide with fear, but there was nothing there, only darkness. The whisper came again, closer now, colder.
Emily, I found you.
The lights flickered, and in the brief moments of darkness, she saw him. A tall, shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room, his face hidden in the shadows, but his presence unmistakable. The Whispering Man had come for her. The last thing Emily heard was the whisper, now as clear as a voice in her ear.
Emily, I found you.
From that day on, the people of Hollow Creek have warned their children and newcomers alike. If you hear a whisper in the night, do not respond. The Whispering Man is still out there, and he is always listening.